I stared through the rain-streaked window, my graduation cap still perched on my head from the ceremony 3 hours earlier. The driver checked his GPS twice, then looked at me with genuine confusion. "This is 428 Maple Street, right?" he asked. "It should be," I whispered, my throat tightening. Where my grandmother's Victorian house had stood for 97 years, there was nothing but mud, construction equipment, and a sign that read, "Luxury Condominiums, coming spring 2026. My house, my inheritance, my home, gone. I paid the driver with trembling hands and stepped out into the drizzle. According to YouTube analytics, 99.6% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. On the corner of the lot, barely protected by a ratty blue tarp, sat 6 cardboard boxes. My name, Marcus Chen, was scrawled across them in my mother's handwriting. I fell to my knees in the mud. Inside those disintegrating boxes was my entire childhood. My grandmother's quilt, photo albums, my father's guitar that he'd promised was mine, books, clothes. Everything was soaked, ruined, treated like garbage. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "We tried calling. Your father and I moved to Arizona. New chapter. The house sale covered our retirement. You're graduated now. Time for you to be independent. So proud of you." No address. No phone number to reach them. Just gone. I had taken a 5th year to finish my engineering degree because I'd worked full-time to avoid loans. 5 years of ramen noodles and 18-hour days. I'd skipped my grandmother's funeral because I had finals. I'd sacrificed everything because they told me the house would always be there, that it was mine, that Gran had left it to me in her will. They had forged my signature. I would learn this later from the lawyer I could barely afford. They'd somehow gotten power of attorney during my grandmother's final days, changed the will, and sold the house I'd grown up in, the house my grandmother had explicitly wanted me to have, for $1.2 million. And they'd left my belongings in boxes, in the rain, like trash. The first month was survival. I crashed on my friend Dev's couch, got a job at a tech startup, and fell into a depression so deep I could barely function. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's text, that casual cruelty. "Time for you to be independent." I'd been independent. I'd put myself through college. They'd just stolen my future. My girlfriend Sarah left me after 3 weeks. "You're not the same person," she said, and she was right. The Marcus who had walked across that graduation stage with dreams and optimism had died in that empty lot. But something else was being born. It started with a phone call I wasn't supposed to hear. Dev had left his phone on the kitchen counter, and his mother's voice echoed through the speaker. "Did you hear about the Chens? Apparently they're living in some luxury resort community in Scottsdale. Posted pictures on Facebook, golf courses, infinity pools, living like lottery winners. My parents had stolen my inheritance and were living my grandmother's dream retirement. Something crystallized inside me then. Not hot anger, that had burned out weeks ago. This was cold, calculated, patient. I opened my laptop and began to research. My parents, I discovered, were not good with money. They never had been. My grandmother had bailed them out of debt twice. When my father's business failed, she'd covered it. When my mother's shopping addiction got out of control, Gran had paid off the credit cards. The $1.2 million from my house wouldn't last forever, not with their habits. I created a fake identity, Marcus Thornton, financial advisor. I built a website, bought a disposable phone, and joined the social media groups for their retirement community. I learned everything: where they ate, what they bought, who they talked to, what they complained about. My mother posted constantly. Pictures of my father on golf courses, her new Lexus, dinner at steakhouses, a kitchen renovation in their new condo, granite countertops, professional appliances. They were burning through the money. 6 months after I'd found those boxes in the rain, I made contact. I commented on one of my mother's posts about investment concerns. I specialize in helping retirees protect their assets. Happy to offer a free consultation. She messaged me within an hour. The video call almost broke me. Seeing my mother's face, older, tanned, laughing in front of a painting that had hung in my grandmother's living room, sent a wave of nausea through me. But I'd prepared for this. I'd rehearsed. "Mr. and Mrs. Chen," I said warmly, my voice slightly disguised with a subtle Southern accent I'd practiced for weeks. "Thank you for taking the time." My father barely looked at the camera, scrolling through his phone. My mother did all the talking, as always. "We came into some money recently," she said, not a trace of shame in her voice. "An inheritance. But we're worried about making it last." An inheritance. That's what she called it. Not "we stole from our son," not "we sold our mother's house." An inheritance. "How much are we talking about?" I asked. "About 800,000 left," my mother said. "We've spent some on the condo and getting settled. 400,000 in 6 months. They'd burned through a third of it." "I see," I said, making notes. "And what are your goals?" For the next hour, they told me everything. They wanted to travel, Europe, Asia, South America. They wanted a boat. My father wanted to invest in a friend's surefire restaurant concept. My mother wanted to renovate their condo again. She'd already changed her mind about the kitchen. They were children with a credit card. "I think I can help," I said finally. "I specialize in high-yield opportunities for retirees. Very exclusive, very limited availability." My mother leaned forward. "How high are we talking?" 20 to 30% annually. But it requires a significant commitment and trust. I watched my father look up from his phone for the first time. "What's the catch?" he asked. "No catch, just exclusivity. I only work with clients I trust, and who trust me. This fund is only available to select individuals." I'd researched this carefully. It wasn't technically illegal, yet. I was offering to put their money into legitimate investments, high-risk investments, speculative cryptocurrency ventures, volatile tech stocks, startups with questionable fundamentals. Everything I recommended would be real, just unwise. "Give me a week," I said. "Let me put together a portfolio proposal. If you like it, we'll talk about next steps." After the call ended, I sat in the darkness of Dev's apartment, shaking. Not from guilt, I was past that. From anticipation. The proposal I sent them was a masterpiece. 40 pages of financial jargon, charts with exponential growth curves, testimonials from satisfied clients I'd fabricated. I made it look professional, exclusive, and most importantly, lucrative. They ate it up. Within 2 weeks, they'd transferred $600,000 into the investment accounts I'd set up. Real accounts, real investments. Legally, I was operating as an unlicensed financial advisor, risky, but not quite criminal. Ethically, I was destroying them. The investments I'd chosen were volatile by design. Cryptocurrency startups, penny stocks in companies that were barely functional, tech ventures that promised revolution but delivered nothing. For the first month, the portfolio actually went up. Beginner's luck. My parents sent me excited emails. My mother posted on Facebook about their financial genius advisor. Then the crash came. One of the crypto companies I'd invested their money in collapsed overnight. CEO arrested for fraud. $300,000 gone in 12 hours. My father called me, panicking. I played my role perfectly, shocked, sympathetic, reassuring. "This is terrible luck," I told him, "but this is why we diversify. The other investments will compensate." They didn't. Over the next 3 months, I watched their portfolio crumble. Every investment I'd made was designed to fail, not through my manipulation, but through natural market forces. I'd simply chosen the worst possible options. The tech startup ran out of funding. The penny stocks were delisted. The remaining crypto ventures plateaued, then plummeted. By month 4, they'd lost $500,000. My mother's Facebook posts became frantic. Questions about financial advisors, complaints about the market, fear bleeding through every word. I didn't respond to their increasingly desperate calls and emails. Marcus Thornton had disappeared. The real revenge came when I sent them the documentation. Every transaction, every investment, every choice I'd made with their money. All perfectly legal, all perfectly documented, all signed off by them. And at the bottom, a letter. "Dear Mom and Dad, you might not recognize my voice, but you should recognize my handwriting. When I returned from university, you left me in an empty lot with my life in boxes. You stole my inheritance, forged my name, and abandoned me without a second thought. You treated me like I was nothing. I haven't stolen from you. Every investment was real. Every document was legal. You signed everything willingly. I just helped you make very, very bad choices with money that should have never been yours. Grandmother left that house to me. You knew it. You took it anyway. Now you know what it feels like to watch your future disappear. I don't want your apology. I don't want reconciliation. I just wanted you to understand what you did to me. Enjoy your retirement. Marcus." The aftermath was nuclear. My uncle called first, my mother's brother, who I'd always liked. "Marcus, what the hell did you do?" I told him everything. The empty lot, the boxes, the forged will, the betrayal. There was a long silence. Then, "Jesus Christ, I had no idea." "No one did," I said. "They told everyone I was being dramatic, that I was entitled, that they'd helped me by teaching me independence." My uncle had been following my parents' social media, seeing their lavish lifestyle while I'd been homeless, and had wondered. Now he knew. "They're broke," he said. "They had to sell the condo. They're living in a 1-bedroom apartment, and your father is working at a golf course. Your mother she's not doing well." I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt. Just empty. "They destroyed me," I said quietly. "I just returned the favor." The legal fallout took months. My parents tried to sue me, but their lawyer took one look at the documentation and withdrew. Everything I'd done was technically legal. Unethical, perhaps, but not criminal. They'd signed every form, approved every transaction. My grandmother's will was another matter. With my uncle's help, I hired a real lawyer. We discovered the power of attorney had been obtained under questionable circumstances. The will had been changed during my grandmother's final days when she was on heavy medication. It took 18 months, but we proved fraud. The judgment was clear. My parents owed me $1.2 million plus damages. They had nothing left to give. The court garnished my father's wages, seized their remaining assets. They declared bankruptcy. I should have felt victorious. 2 years after finding those boxes in the rain, I stood in a different empty lot. This one had a sold sign with my name on it. I'd used the settlement money, what little I could actually collect, to buy the land where my grandmother's house had stood. The developer had gone bankrupt. The luxury condominiums were never built. It was just an empty lot. But it was mine. Dev found me there one Saturday morning, standing in the overgrown grass. "You okay?" he asked. I didn't know how to answer. I'd gotten my revenge. I'd destroyed my parents financially, just as they destroyed me. I'd proven the will was fraudulent. I'd reclaimed my inheritance, what was left of it. But I'd also become someone I didn't recognize, someone cold, someone who could methodically ruin two people's lives without flinching. My grandmother used to have a garden here, I said, pointing to the northeast corner. Roses. She'd cut them every Sunday and put them all over the house. You could plant roses, Dev suggested quietly. I could, I agreed, but they wouldn't be hers. That was the thing about revenge. You could destroy someone. You could take everything from them. You could make them feel exactly what they made you feel. But you couldn't get back what was lost. My grandmother was still dead. The house was still gone. 5 years of my life were still spent working myself to exhaustion. My belongings were still ruined in those boxes. Revenge didn't undo any of it. Your mom tried to call me, Dev said, left a message. She wanted me to tell you she's sorry. I closed my eyes. Is she sorry she did it, or sorry she got caught? Does it matter? Maybe it did. Maybe it didn't. The legal victory had been hollow. The money I'd recovered was a fraction of what they'd taken. Most had been spent, lost, or protected in bankruptcy. I'd gotten judgments I could never collect. But I'd also gotten something else. The knowledge that they understood. They knew what betrayal felt like. They knew what it was to lose everything. They knew what I'd felt standing in that lot, staring at boxes in the rain. I'm going to build something here, I said suddenly. Not a house. Something else. A community garden, maybe. Something my grandmother would have liked. Dev looked at me carefully. That's good, man. That's really good. I don't forgive them, I added quickly. I don't know if I ever will. You don't have to, Dev said. Forgiveness isn't mandatory, but moving forward is. 3 years after the empty lot, the community garden opened. 20 raised beds, all available free to neighborhood residents. A rose garden in the corner, not my grandmother's roses, but descendants of them, cultivated from cuttings my uncle had preserved. My parents didn't come to the opening. I didn't invite them, but my uncle came, and Dev, and Sarah, surprisingly. We'd reconnected as friends, nothing more. And dozens of neighbors who remembered my grandmother, who remembered the Victorian house, who wanted to see something beautiful grow where something beautiful had been destroyed. I gave a short speech, dedicating the garden to my grandmother's memory. I didn't mention my parents. I didn't mention the betrayal. I just talked about growth, community, and resilience. Afterward, my uncle pulled me aside. Your mother is sick, he said quietly. Heart condition, stress-related. I waited for the guilt. It didn't come, just a dull acknowledgement. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and I meant it. I didn't want my mother to suffer physically. I just wanted her to understand what she'd done. She asks about you, my uncle continued. Your father does too. They know they destroyed everything. They know they can never make it right. No, I agreed. They can't. Will you ever speak to them again? I looked at the garden, at the roses, at the people planting seeds in the beds, creating something new in a space that had been empty and scarred. I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe someday, maybe never. Right now, I'm just trying to grow something good. My uncle nodded slowly. Your grandmother would be proud of this. That did bring tears, because that's what I'd wanted all along. Not revenge, not justice, not even reconciliation. Just to make my grandmother proud, to take something broken and make it beautiful again. The revenge had been complete. My parents lost everything, their money, their security, their retirement dreams. They understood betrayal now in a way they never had before. But revenge, I'd learned, was a strange thing. It didn't feel like I'd imagined. There was no triumphant moment, no satisfaction, just a quiet, cold certainty that I'd hurt them as badly as they'd hurt me. And then the emptiness of realizing it changed nothing. The garden grew, I built a career, found purpose, created community in a space that had been devastated. But I also lived with the knowledge of what I'd done. I'd methodically destroyed 2 people's lives. I'd manipulated them. I'd exploited their weaknesses. I'd become exactly as cruel as they'd been. Some nights, I wondered if that made me worse. Other nights, I remembered standing in the rain, staring at boxes of my ruined belongings, and I felt nothing but that cold certainty that they deserved every moment of suffering. The truth lived somewhere in between. 5 years after the empty lot, I received a letter. My mother's handwriting, shaky now. I stared at the envelope for 3 days before opening it. Inside was a single photograph. Me as a child, sitting in my grandmother's garden, covered in dirt, grinning at the camera. On the back, in my grandmother's handwriting, Marcus, age 7, my little gardener. And below it, my mother's shaky script. I found this in storage. I thought you should have it. I'm sorry for everything. I know that means nothing now, but it's true. I put the photograph on my desk, next to a picture of the community garden. I didn't respond to the letter, but I didn't throw it away either. Revenge was complete. Justice had been served. The garden was growing, and somewhere in the complicated mess of anger and loss and growth and pain, I was learning to live with all of it. The past couldn't be undone. Forgiveness couldn't be forced. But life, like a garden, kept growing anyway. In the spaces where houses once stood, new things could bloom, even if the roses were never quite the same.